Brighter Light, Darker Shadow by Backing into Infinity, read by Oak Shadow 5. As you can see, this episode is longer than the last one, which means I'm doing 2 chapters in 1 episode. So let's start with Chapter 2, New Moral Groundings. Summary: a few glimpses into the boys' lives throughout middle school. Friendship mended and reaffirmed by their new shared goal, the boys stay fast friends throughout elementary school. Neither of them makes many other friends. Katsuki is driven and prickly, and Izuku prefers to stick to him rather than fight his anxiety to expand his social circle. They spend most of their time at Izuku's place, his mother working long hours and leaving them alone in the apartment most afternoons. "Hey, nerd," Katsuki says, tossing a ball in his hands as he lays on Izuku's bed. "How are you going to pass the entrance exam?" Izuku looks up from where he is typing away at his laptop, working on a coding lesson he had found through the local library. "I don't know, Kachan. I have 3 years to figure it out though, so I'm not too concerned," he says, shrugging. Katsuki swings his legs off the bed and sits up. "That's bullshit, and you know it," he says. "Everyone says the exam is super tough and biased towards awesome quirks like mine. You need to think of a strategy now, so you have time to practice." He jumps to his feet and shuts the laptop, drawing an outraged squawk from his best friend. Pacing around the room, he crackles his palms with excitement. "We should learn martial arts," he declares, throwing some phantom punches at the air. Izuku reopens his laptop back up and types into the search bar, Katsuki's excitement catching on with him. "Are there dojos nearby that have classes we could attend? What type of martial art would be best suited to heroics? Are we in shape enough for martial arts, or do we need to start with exercise? Are we old enough to work out? Can you incorporate quirks into martial arts? Should we find— Ow!" The mumble storm is cut off by Katsuki punching him in the shoulder. "Slow down, nerd," Katsuki says as he opens the door. "There's a place nearby that advertises good hero training. Let's just ask Auntie Inko to sign us up." The place nearby turned out to be a local dojo for Taekwondo, one of the many martial arts that had survived the dawn of quirks nearly unchanged. Today, Taekwondo bore closer resemblance to the military form of the art than to the pre-quirk era sport, and it emphasized self-defense techniques a little heavier than it did the sport of sparring. Regardless, the structure and traditions of the art had been preserved, and the dojo drew in students by promising to teach them both techniques and values that would be useful for heroics. The boys entered the building after school for their first class and were given a short tour of the dojo. It was a small room, with interlocking red and blue mats on the floor and various punching bags and dummies lining one wall, with floor-to-ceiling mirrors along 2 more walls. The Sabom, a Korean version of Sensei, as Izuku helpfully supplied, introduced himself as Mr. Hideyoshi and explained that the boys would begin as white belts and would train 3 times a week. Izuku breathed deeply through his nose as he eyed his opponent on the other side of the ring. The taller, tailed boy glared back with determination as they squared up to continue the 3rd round of the finals. This was not Izuku's first mixed martial arts tournament, but it was the first time he had gotten to the finals, and the first time he had gotten farther than Kachan. His opponent was a brown belt in karate, making him roughly a belt higher than Izuku's own equally brown belt. The ref barked the words to begin, and Izuku rushed forwards. He shifted into an L stance, bouncing on the balls of his feet cautiously as he waited for the other boy to attack. Over the last year and a half, Izuku had developed into a careful and meticulous counter-offensive fighter, and it was serving him well in this tournament. He tensed as his opponent shifted their weight to the front foot, sliding his front arm into a block as the tail boy threw a front kick, then rotating his arm diagonally to block the following twist kick. Shoving the taller boy off balance with the block, Izuku stepped in with a quick series of punches, ending with a clean strike to the head and leaping backwards. The 2 boys circled for a moment, both panting with exertion as they sized each other up for the last time that day. Izuku rotated to the side and went for a counter-strike as his opponent opened with a jumping kick, but the taller boy's reach and speed were too much for Izuku, and the kick and subsequent strikes connected on him a moment before time was called. The boys bowed. Shaking hands after the tailed boy was declared the winner. The boy was mobbed by his clubmates, and Izuku headed back over to Kachan and the rest of his dojo. "What was that shitty performance, nerd?" Kachan ripped him, clapping him on the back and handing him some water. "That final kick left him wide open. You should have been faster." "Bakugo-san," the Sabam barked sharply. "Be respectful. Remember your values or you will be doing conditional drills again this week." He turned to Izuku and congratulated him in a much warmer voice. "You've come a long way, Midoriya-san. By this time next year you may even reach the 1st dan." Midoriya bowed and thanked his instructor, smiling at the praise. Being in Taekwondo had done wonders for his confidence and transformed him from a gangly youth into a much more toned, albeit still short, teenager. He still found crowds and new people daunting, but once he adjusted, he could be as witty and carefree as any other teen. Yeah, Kachan, keep up the attitude and you never win one of these, he joked. Maybe you should do the extra conditioning, and next time you might beat me. Fuck off, nerd, Kachan retorted slightly, clapping him on the back again and guiding him over to their parents as they waved goodbye to Hideyoshi-sensei. You know as well as I do that if I used my quirk, I'd level you. Which is why you'll be the high mighty limelight hero, while I'll do all the real work in the shadows, Izuku says. Zuku! Katsuki shouted, booking it down the fire escape to the alley below. Fuck man, are you alright? I'm fine, Izuku groaned, picking himself out of the dumpster and brushing off his clothes. That next rooftop was a bit farther than I expected, that's all. Nothing more than bruises. Farther than I expected my ass, Katsuki says. You fell because you were trying that fancy dive again instead of jumping over it like a sane person. That fancy dive is going to look so cool once I master it though. What it's going to look like is another hospital trip and me tearing my hair out trying to explain to Auntie how he broke a bone for the third time this semester, Katsuki retorts, helping Izuku out of the bin with a sigh. Where's the shy nerd from elementary school when you need him? Stop trying moves on the roofs until the instructor says you are ready for them in the gym. The two boys were in the summer after the third year now, preparing for the entrance exams that would take place in a few months. Both had grown into muscled, well-built teenagers, and had recently obtained their first dan black belts in Taekwondo. At the start of the last school year, Izuku had talked Katsuki into joining a local parkour gym as well, and had begun an impressive streak of sprained bones and semi-permanent bruises, much to his mother's constant worry. Kachan, I'll be fine, Izuku whined, shoving his hands into his shorts and walking out of the alley. Then be fine tomorrow. Let's go home and study now. You can show me that computer shit you were working on last night while I finish the review sheets for algebra. Katsuki followed him out of the alleyway, carrying on casual conversation about the recent All Might sightings in Musutafu, and speculating on whether the slime villain he had captured a few months ago would have posed a fight to the local heroes if All Might hadn't been around. Katsuki was more controlled nowadays, channeling his inner eat shit and die, as Izuku called it, into only people who deserved it. When they had first started middle school, Katsuki had got himself banned from the dojang for a week, multiple times, for bullying kids and getting into fights, nearly getting himself kicked out before he straightened out. The strict code of rules and ethics provided by Taekwondo had been good for him, and now the only time Katsuki beat the shit out of someone was in defense of himself or others, in the ring doing self-defense nights, and if Izuku stole the last goddamn cookie again. Alright, nerd, this program better not be more illegal shit, Katsuki says, pulling up a chair to Izuku's desk and cracking open his algebra book. After the last time I had to talk you down from tapping police cameras for fun, if you do it again, I'll turn you in, fucker. No, you can't, Izuku shouts, quickly tapping to your new program. This one is completely illegal. It's just a basic algorithm to map out villain settings and predict where they will attack next in a city. Totally legal, and the police use similar, if way more complicated, programs all the time to help narrow down patrol zones for serial killers. Just don't ask where I'm getting the activity data from, okay? So that was chapter 2, and now we'll start with chapter 3. Chapter 3 is titled A New Friend, and the summary reads as follows. Entrance exam time. Can Bakugo conquer helping others? Can Midoriya face women? Katsuki takes a deep breath as he walks up to the UA gates, Izuku at his side mumbling nervously. They step through, walking towards the building indicated on the map from the exam package. Katsuki hears a shout and turns around hurriedly, just in time to watch Izuku fall towards the ground as if in slow motion. A passing girl reaches for him in an attempt to grab him, but before she can, Izuku is tucking into a dive, only slightly different from the same move he spent all summer practicing on the rooftops and bouncing back to his feet. Oh, sorry, I thought you were going to fall there, the girl says, looking surprised at his sudden recovery. It would be bad luck to fall on exam day, right? Katsuki scores as the nerd turns bright red and stammers out something unintelligible before the girl waves and walks off. Wow, nerd, real Casanova there, he says dryly. How the fuck are you going to be a hero if you can't talk just because it's a woman? What if your exam proctor is midnight, huh? Put it together, Zuku. Don't worry, Kachan, I'll be fine, Izuku says, brushing the embarrassment and dust off. I have to face women, You have to face the much scarier prospect of not giving your proctor a heart attack with their personality. Whatever, nerd, let's just go in. Katsuki looks around the area in front of the gate to the practical appraisingly as he shakes off the cobwebs from the written exam. He had destroyed that lame-ass test, of course, but 3 hours of exam will do anybody's head in. He stuffed his hands in his pockets and walks towards one of the examinees. May as well put Hideyoshi Sensei's words into practice and try to make friends or some shit. "Hey, extra," he says gruffly to the tired-looking purple-haired kid. "Excited for the exam?" "Not at all," the purple-haired boy responds. "Who do you think you are, calling me an extra like that?" "I'm the one who will be the fucking best, that's what—" Katsuki cuts off, his mind going blank for a moment. "Go away, leave me alone till we start." Katsuki shakes himself as the buzzer sounds, marveling at that crazy fucking kid's quirk as he charges forwards with a pack of other examinees towards the robots. He applies his explosions liberally as he does so, boosting himself forwards and up into the air, shakily hovering in a move he had only recently started to get the hang of. He shoots an explosion towards a one-pointer as it swings out of an alleyway, and cackles as it gets torn to shreds in magnificent fashion. All the pent-up stress and anger he's been feeling for the last few weeks, preparing for the stupid exam, lets itself out as he tears through Mock City in a whirlwind of explosions and chaotic shrapnel. Maybe halfway through the allotted time, he lost count somewhere between 3 minutes and 30 dead robots scattered across the streets, Katsuki spots the purple-haired kid from earlier, desperately beating at a robot with a pipe. His stringy arms can't exert enough force to even dent the robot, and as Katsuki watches, a swipe from it sends the boy stumbling across the street, gasping. He turns to move on, then pauses, his instructor's words and the tenets of Taekwondo echoing through his head. "Fuck, this is some fucking Izuku shit," Katsuki curses, charging back towards the boy. "Hey, Purple, you said quirk on me, get yourself some fucking points already." "What?" "Your quirk, the mind-whammy shit, use it!" Katsuki feels his mind slip into blankless for a second time that day, and watches his body pivot on its own and pulverize some robots. The kickback snaps him out of the brainwashing a few times, and after a couple minutes of gaining points on the boy's behalf, he snarls and blasts off, just in time for the big fuck-off robot to appear, destroying buildings as it advances. "Oh, hell yes!" Katsuki screams, blasting towards it with a triumphantly manic grin on his face, leaving behind a baffled insomniac standing in a street of twisted scrap. "So, how'd you do, Kachan?" Izuku says happily, swinging his bag beside him as they trudge home tightly after the practical. "I fucking destroyed it, of course," Katsuki says. "Even popped the face of that big one. How'd you get through, nerd?" "I did alright," Izuku says unconcernedly. "Not top scorer, I imagine, but I wrecked a good few between pulling the weak ones apart and grabbing at some off-switches on the three-pointers." Katsuki grunts, waving him goodbye as he goes home to shower. 30 minutes later, as hot water streams down his back, he stares pensively at the tiled wall, reflecting on the exam. Before martial arts, he wouldn't have stopped to help that boy. Even now, during the exam, his instincts screamed for him to leave the boy alone and continue gleefully fucking shit up. What did that say about him as a hero? Could he save people with a smile like All Might if all he was driven to do was destroy? Katsuki shakes his head to clear it of the negative thoughts. Of course, he was going to be a fantastic hero. He was Katsuki fucking Bakugo, future #1. Izuku barges into Kachan's room after waving hurriedly at his mother, 2 letters clutched tightly in his hands as he squealed out a greeting. "They're here, Kachan!" he says gleefully, throwing a letter at him as he flops onto the bed. "Open it! Open it! Open it!" "Alright, I will. Just pipe down, will you, nerd?" Katsuki groans at the early morning disruption, slitting his letter and dumping out a small disc. The disc shimmers and bursts to life, letting out a hologram of All Might that announces his score. Izuku has a similar disc, playing another pre-recorded message that only deviates in what numbers are announced. "Holy crap, Kachan! First place with a perfect 100 points!" Izuku cheers. "And you got 35 rescue points too? Who are you, and what did you do to my best friend and new Class 1A mate?" "Shut up, nerd. I'm going to be a hero. Of course I fucking rescue people." Kachan growls back, replaying Izuku's disc. "How the hell did you get 3rd place? 35 robot points? I understand the 40 rescue points, but 35? That's more than half the other examinees got." Izuku flinches, his mind flashing back to a 10-minute whirlwind of parkour, mania, and oily carnage as a green figure bounced between buildings, tugging people out of the way and diving into robots. Switches, he says loudly with a shaky grin. So that was chapter 2 and 3 of Brighter Light Darker Shadow. So we see that Izuku gets into UA quirkless just with his training. I really want to see his point of the entrance exam, but the author wrote in the notes that we don't ask Izuku what happened in his exam, so we won't probably see his perspective. But anyways, guys, I hope you all enjoyed chapter 2 and 3 of Brighter Light Darker Shadow, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!